Hello and welcome to today's Advective Weather video. We have an enhanced risk in place for storms that are ongoing at the time of recording. This is across portions of central and eastern Kansas into far western Missouri. The main threat is significant hail and damaging wind gusts, with the tornado threat only being at a slight risk, level 2 out of 5. There is also a slight risk across North Carolina and Virginia, however there is no tornado risk associated with this. That's only a lower end hail and wind event. Isolated very large hail has been observed and will continue for the next several hours, as will the possibility of intense wind gusts across that enhanced risk area and the slight risk area around it, although this is less likely still. There could be a couple of tornadoes with the rest of this event. Also, we've had one report so far, of course hasn't been confirmed at this point, but generally the threat is going to be that damaging wind and large hail rather than an outbreak of tornadoes today. That's not expected. Looking at the pattern, you can see that low pressure areas across the Rockies are pulling moisture up from the Gulf of Mexico, with that boundary through Kansas and Missouri driving the severe weather. It's that time of year where you have to look at the US as a whole, fully zoomed out, to see all the different severe risks in one image. We have 3 of the 4 borders of the United States, of the contiguous United States I should say, with a severe risk, including Montana and North Dakota, in a marginal risk, a separate marginal risk across the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana, and that slight risk in North Carolina and Virginia. The only part of the United States without a severe risk today is, of course, the West Coast. Zooming in so you can get a quick look at the cities within that risk, the northwestern parts of this risk is likely over, apart from a couple of scattered lower end severe storms that shouldn't have any tornado risk, but nothing can be ruled out. Just pay attention to warnings until the watch is cancelled. Looking in detail, you can see that there is an elevated tornado risk across portions of Kansas, but it is not expected to be a particularly big day for tornadoes, especially compared to some of the events we've had so far this year. There is also the isolated chance of a tornado or two along the Gulf Coast of Texas, but not as high as in Kansas. Once again, the main risk today is from that significant wind risk within the enhanced risk region, and also the potential for very large but isolated hail. And it should also be noted that that slight risk region is only for a lower end wind and hail threat. There isn't any hatching today. Looking at things as a whole for today, you can see the simulated radar for the rest of the event. Storms ongoing across Kansas gradually break apart and die down as the evening progresses, although there could be some more storms that fire up to the west and indeed across portions of Missouri for a time, finally dying out as we go into the early morning hours, and that band of storms moving through Nebraska could produce some gusty winds and some frequent lightning, but generally should remain below severe limits. Moving on into tomorrow, a very long slight risk from Montana all the way down to the Texas Panhandle, 2 out of 5 risk, with an elevated tornado risk in the middle of that for portions of Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and far northwest Kansas. A large hail and damaging wind threat will also be present. At this time, none of the risks are significant, meaning no hatching, but of course this could change with the outlooks tomorrow, so do check back with our video tomorrow. We can see that those low pressure areas have not moved at all, still drawing up moisture from the Gulf, which is going to gradually increase in depth during the next several days. So we could see a gradual uptick in intensity as these events progress, getting through to Thursday, of course, when these lows will start to move out to the east. But focusing once again on tomorrow, Wednesday, that slight risk from Texas Panhandle up into Montana. And there you can see some of the cities in that risk. It is west of Dodge City and north of Amarillo, but it does include Goodland, Kansas, Denver, and Fort Collins, Colorado, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Rapid City, South Dakota, and of course including portions of western Nebraska. There's that 5% tornado risk I mentioned across those 4 states. It does include Cheyenne, and just touches portions of Denver and Goodland, and of course Fort Collins. There's that slight risk being outlined pretty much perfectly by the severe wind and the hail as well. It's interesting to note that at this time there isn't a wind severe risk for the far northern part of the United States, only a severe hail risk. Now, here's the radar for tomorrow, simulated radar from the HRRR, I should say. You can see that there's nothing immediately. Those storms from the overnight die out, but then we see more storms firing up along that dry line from the southern end of the risk all the way up to the Canadian border. Quite early to see such a large area in terms of north to south distance being affected by severe weather, and it is also tending to get to these areas a bit earlier than usual. Don't often see a 5% tornado risk in Wyoming in the first half of May, but it does happen sometimes. It's not unheard of, it's just on the rarer side of things. So do pay attention. We could see a couple of tornadoes tomorrow, and potentially we could see some upgrades to the severe risks. Now, finally going on to day 3, for the severe weather at least, another slight risk, 2 out of 5, but this risk is A, bigger in size, but also has a hatched risk region, significant severe threat, expected. And being 3 days out, there is 2 full days where this could be upgraded to an enhanced, possibly higher, but not particularly likely to go that far at this time, I should say. It is an all-hazard risk. Tornadoes, very large hail, and damaging winds are all expected. Regardless of the eventual risk level, this event will bring an elevated severe risk to a large part of the central United States. Once again, with that hatched risk region, which is in the lower part across Kansas and Oklahoma. I'll show you that in more detail in just a second. We can see those low pressure areas that have been sitting across the Rockies for today and tomorrow, I should say, will begin to move eastwards on Thursday. And looking at the cities within the slight risk region, it does go from Kansas City all the way to just east of Rapid City. Goodland, Kansas, in a slight risk for the 2nd day in a row. And it does stop just north of Oklahoma City at this time. But there is the potential that this risk could be extended well southward tomorrow. The NAM 3-kilometer model, which came out after this was issued, I should add, does show a severe risk as far south as northern Texas, so do stay tuned to potential changes and upgrades, which will of course come from the Storm Prediction Center. We will have a video tomorrow to let you know what has changed. And there is that significant hatched risk region where strong winds to 75 miles an hour or higher and hail of 2 inches or diameter or greater is possible, could end up being a significant tornado risk, EF2+, but at this time, we just don't know enough 3 days out. Not the strongest pattern, quite on the edge for tornadoes at least, fairly clear cut for the other two. Have to wait and see how the models develop in the next couple of days. And here is that NAM 3-kilometer run I was telling you about. You can see that it's fairly quiet during the early part of the afternoon, but then during the late afternoon into the evening, severe storms fire up across that slight risk region, with potentially some isolated significant supercells across portions of Kansas and Oklahoma. So you'll notice that those storms in Oklahoma were south of the slight risk region, and once again, this did come out after that outlook was issued. So, potential for this risk to be expanded tomorrow, or indeed on Thursday itself. Of course, pay attention to watches when they're issued. They let you know that severe weather could occur in the next several hours and is expected, but won't necessarily impact you directly. Like may happen in your state or a neighbouring state, but doesn't always affect you if a watch is issued. However, if a warning is issued, it is very likely that a severe thunderstorm or a tornado will directly impact you, and you should take the appropriate action immediately for a tornado warning or a destructive severe thunderstorm that is seeking shelter in your tornado safe place, away from windows, lowest level of your house, as always. Now, you may know where to go I presume that most people in Tornado Alley know what to do if a tornado happens, but if you've got some friends visiting or there's some people who are new to the area and haven't come from another part of the US that receives severe weather on a regular basis, make sure they're aware of what to do. and show them how to receive watches and warnings so that they know when they should be taking action. Now, before we end the video today, we're going to take a quick look at the severe flooding risk over the next couple of days. Today and tomorrow has a moderate risk of excessive rainfall, driven exclusively by thunderstorms across Texas and far western Louisiana. Around that, of course, the slight and marginal risks, but it should also be noted there is a slight risk of excessive rainfall, 2 out of 4, for Kansas today and across portions of Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Montana tomorrow, the northern parts of that slight risk of severe weather. Some of the flooding may be severe or dangerous to people if you're caught in it. So, of course, go over what hopefully to most people is common sense, but if you're in a dangerous situation, it's best not to think, it's best to know for certain. If flood watch is issued, flooding is possible, find a way to receive updates, and of course, stay tuned to trusted sources. Plenty of people like to post outdated footage from years ago and pretend there's a major flood going on, get people scared. Doesn't always happen, but if you see your local weather station or news channel talking about live flooding, you can be sure that there is a need to be alert. When a flood warning is issued for your location, flooding is imminent or already ongoing, and you should take action. If you're in a low-lying area that's prone to flooding, move to high ground immediately, and of course never drive or walk through flood waters. When it is flooded, turn around, don't drown, because even a few inches of water can pick up a car, and a foot of flowing water can pick up an SUV quite comfortably. Just a couple of inches of fast-flowing water can sweep a person off their feet if they are outside a vehicle, and even if it's only a little bit, even if it's just an inch, there could be some debris in it that you don't notice that knocks you over. And once you're off the road, the water very often is deeper off the road than on the road, and it may be difficult or impossible for you to get out of those fast-moving floodwaters. So, of course, the safest thing to do is to stay clear of them and be safe. So that's all for today. In the coming days, we might have a video on the developing situation in the North Indian Ocean. A tropical cyclone could develop and impact portions of India, Bangladesh, Myanmar. Once that becomes named, we will have a video for you, keeping you updated as it strengthens and moves towards the coast. But thank you very much for watching once again. We hope you stay safe wherever you are in the world, and have a good evening.